All right. Hello, Southwest pilots. I've got Andy with me today. He's part of our leading edge team. I'm Charlie, and just want to introduce today some concepts about short-term disability, the new programs that have come out, Andy, and they're very different than the old programs. So we're going to talk about those short-term disability, long-term disability A and B, and we're going to intermix sick time in there. How much sick time should we have? We'll give maybe some framework for making decisions there. So that's what we're hoping to do today is maybe simplify this thing a little bit. But let's jump in, Andy, and let's
Cool.
talk about big picture impressions. And any thoughts, any takeaways before I share the screen, as far as any things that you've taken away as you've become an expert on these plans at this point. That might be a strong word right now, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big picture for pilots is it's going to be a totally personal decision, and your own financial
Mhm,
situation that determines kind of what's the best course of action for you, whether you take short-term disability, LTD A,
mhm.
B, none of the above, right? But
Yeah,
that's really going to be dependent upon you and your preferences and
yeah.
your financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the important thing too is to know some dates. Open enrollment starts April 1st and runs through the 12th. So that's important where you're going to get an opportunity to change those plans. Now, if you don't do anything, you're going to default to short-term disability A and excuse me, that's the old one. You're going to default
Yeah.
to short-term disability and long-term disability A. And so the good news is, if that's not exactly what you want, the open enrollment will then start in the fall again, as it always does, and around the October timeframe, where you can maybe make some of those changes. But the good news is, I think it's good news, Andy. You're going to be defaulted into those. If you're not in a program right now, you'll be put back
Yep.
in there, which is good because there's no medical required if you're defaulted into it. And sometimes people, defaulted out for whatever reason or chose to jump out. So I think that's a good thing. But I think that's the big picture. April 1st to the 12th, make
Yep.
the selections. If you don't do anything, short-term disability, long-term disability A, and you have opportunity to change it in the fall during open enrollment.
That's right.
All
And
right.
open enrollment though, the catch there is you will have to do a statement of health if you wait until
Yes.
the fall to do it.
Perfect. That's
So
great.
that
Yeah.
could be a change there, and
Yeah.
you might not you might not qualify
Yeah.
if you wait.
That's a great point. I would avoid that statement of health if it were me making these decisions because, like you just, for the very reasons you just said. So, well, let's jump in. So, short-term disability, Andy, they can read it on the screen here, but it's a 14-day elimination period. And what are the highlights there as far as the coverage overview that you think?
Yeah, so I think the important takeaway here is you're going to get 50% of the pre-disability earnings out to a max of 2,500 per week. And it's really meant to be a bridge to your loss of license
Mhm.
for your long-term disability. Remember, the new contract provides you a 60-day elimination period until those kick in. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the takeaway in terms of what you're going to get if
Mhm.
you actually have to use this benefit.
Yeah. And this one just we did the fifth grade math here. And basically, if you're making 260,000 a year, you're gonna max out the excuse me, you're gonna max out the short-term disability at 2,500 a week. So anybody at 260 and above, you're getting 2,500 a week. Anybody below that, you'll want to do the math and go, hey, how much am I going to get as far as short-term disability? All right, Andy, who needs this benefit?
Mm, yeah, that's the real question, right?
Yeah.
So you probably need, if you want to use just your sick TFP, right? You probably
Hmm.
need about 200 in the bank that to get you there, right? That'll
Hmm.
cover you 100% of your earnings, right? To get you there. So you probably need to have at least 200, or that's a target goal. Or conversely, right? If you've got a really good emergency fund, a lot of cash sitting around, hey,
Yeah.
maybe you don't. That's exactly what emergency fund is there for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you don't need to use the short-term
Yeah.
disability, right? And then that last point there, it's a bridge. It'll bridge you through the short-term disability, right? Or the
Mhm.
elimination period. But then maybe think about like, well, if I go on this long term, how much am I going to need just to drop one TFP
Yeah.
a month, right? And there's some nuance there that maybe we
Yeah.
can get into
Yeah.
to get you there, right? So I don't know, 300, right? Does that sound about right,
Yeah,
Charlie?
I think
In
you're
that
right. And just
range?
like you started off with, it's going to be very personal dependent. But again, if you've got a good emergency fund, a healthy emergency fund, a large sick bank, large meaning like you kind of said, three, four, 500 or more, you may not need short-term disability. All right. Everybody else, you probably ought to consider if you're a low sick time kind of person, low emergency fund, first of all, get those built back up a little bit. But yeah, you might need short-term disability for a while, and then maybe down the road you can cancel it once you get that emergency fund built back up. But I think what you said here is super important. You're going to need not just 200 to get you the 2 months elimination period to loss of license, but there's some interesting thing happens when I get one sick trip a month. And like you said, there's some nuances, but big picture, I get vacation accrual, and I also get to participate in profit sharing. If I have that one sick trip per month going on there.
Hmm.
Did I say that right, Andy?
Yep, I think that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So you'll get the accrual, the profit
Yeah.
sharing. You don't technically need one TFP per month, so you get
Hmm.
190 credit hours if you put one TFP plus I think 501 per
Yeah.
the contract on that
Yeah.
long term. But you need 1,000 hours, right, of
Yeah.
credit hours to qualify. And the other interesting thing is that profit sharing payout is based on MBE,
Yeah.
right, not the disability payout. So
Yeah. That's pretty
assuming
phenomenal.
Southwest is profitable, right?
Yeah.
That could be a huge benefit.
Absolutely. So that's a little bit of motivation to be able to basically sprinkle those sick trips one per month for however long you're out on disability. There's a lot of good reasons to do that. Okay, so Andy, that's the short-term disability highlights anyway. Again, a little bit of judgment there on what you have and whether you should have short-term disability or not. We can't make that specific recommendation, but if you're in a solid financial position, you may not need it. So let's
Totally.
switch over to long-term disability A and B. Very different programs here, but I think you've got a pretty good handle on it as well. And so, can you kind of just break down big picture wise A versus B to help us get a frame of reference here?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is maybe take one more step back, Charlie, and we'll just
Mhm.
say, what is that loss of license coverage
Yeah.
that you're going to
Mhm.
get, right? And so
Yeah.
that is going to be 50% of your
Mhm.
MBE, and you
Mhm.
elect whether that's pre-tax or after-tax
Yeah.
dollars. I think the general consensus here is you probably want to have that thing come into you tax-free, right? Which means you're going to pay some imputed income just to have that coverage.
You're going to pay
But
taxes on that imputed income. Right.
that's
Yeah.
right. Taxes on the imputed income. Yeah, we got to
I
stress that.
interrupt you there because that's confusing. Very confusing.
Stress
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
So the first thing is how much you're going to get without even opting into or being
Mhm.
opted into one of these plans.
Mhm.
And now when you consider a long-term disability A plan, that's going
Mhm.
to pay you 10% of the pre-disability earnings. So a
Mhm.
little bit different than MBE, right?
Yeah.
But probably about the same. So 10%. So the way to think about that is you're probably going to get about 60% of your pre-tax
Mhm.
MBE, right? And there's a cap to
Yeah.
that. It's going to be up to 2,500 a month on long-term
Yeah.
disability
Okay.
A.
Gotcha. So you're saying the 60% is coming from 50% loss of license. And then if you elect long-term disability A, you're going to get about 60% of your pre-tax,
That's right.
pre-disability
That's
earnings
right.
or
Pre-disability
MBE,
earnings.
MBE in this case up here. These are the numbers we're talking about.
Yeah, we're using those
Mhm.
interchangeably here, but they're going to be
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And so this is long-term disability A, 10%. Now, obviously, that's capped at 2,500
That's right.
a month. So it may be less than 10% for those that are super high income earners.
That's right. Yeah, you think about 300,000 of income above that, that percentage is going to start going down.
Gotcha. Okay. And I said super high. That's not really super high. That's, your captain, senior FO on these new pay rates is probably going to be in those numbers. But
Yep.
I think what you said earlier that was important was how much do you want? How much if you become disabled and I think you randomly, not randomly, but you put 75 in here to simulate, hey, I pay some taxes, I pay maybe some savings or whatever,
Yeah.
and this is what I need to live on to pay the bills. I've been used to making a significant amount, and this is what I want. So clearly in this example, I get 50% of my monthly earnings from loss of license, and then I get the other 10% if I'm 300,000 or less. And if you're above 300,000, it's going to be a little less than 10% because it maxes at 2,500. So in this case, I'm only at, well, where's the number? You've got the number doped out, right?
Yeah, there you go.
There it is right there.
18,363. Now that's a
Yeah.
year, that's year two, right?
Mhm.
That assumes, or I should say that's not year two, but
Mhm.
starting in month three, right? You got your
Yeah.
60-day elimination
Yeah.
period.
Okay. Gotcha. So in other words, after the elimination period, after things settle out a little bit,
That's right.
and if I'm on loss of license and long-term disability A, I'm looking at 18,363 per month, tax free. And again, that's assuming all the the pay rates up here are what we're going off of. But the point here is
Right.
that we're still not close to that 75% that we really kind of have pretended that we need or want. So we're still a
That's
good
right.
solid $5,500 a month from that,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. In
Um,
this example, you're getting about 77% of that take home
yeah.
MBE. So
Okay.
77%. There's a lot of different moving parts here, but
Yeah.
that may make that compelling or not
Yeah.
compelling, right, for
Absolutely.
you.
You're right. I think you nailed it. Like, does my spouse work? Do I have a military pension? Um, again, do I need this amount to live on? And I know a lot of our pilots out there have said, "Hey, we used to know, or until the new changes, 13,500 was the maximum that anybody would get disability. So they've trained themselves to live on that, and I think that's a good practice, or something to think about as long as you don't constrain yourself too much. But I think making this decision takes some planning and some thought. And then you can decide, hey, do I need anything at all? Maybe I'm happy with 50%. Maybe I'm happy with 15,863, which is what loss of license would pay. And then
That's right.
maybe I want to pay the extra to get, I'm going to jump right down. We'll get to this in a second, but if you choose loss of license and long-term disability B, you're going to be getting this number total after things settle out a little bit, which we'll talk to in a
That's right.
second.
That's right.
But that's a little closer to my goal here, and so maybe that's worth it to me. So, Andy, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. So the
Mhm.
long-term disability B,
Mhm.
right? So for the first 4 months, so months 3 through 6 is going to look identical in the payout as
Mhm.
long-term disability A. And then in month 7 and on,
Mhm.
right? Oh, by the way, these all pay out until mandatory retirement or age
Yeah.
65, right? In month 7 and on, you're now going to get 15%, and that's going to be
Yeah.
capped at 6,300.
Okay.
So that's
Sure.
now you jump to about if you make,
Yeah.
504,000 and less, that's where that's going to start changing on you.
Okay. I think that's a great way to summarize and to provide a framework of how do I make this decision. Again, starting here, how much of my pre-disability income do I want to replace? Maybe
Yep,
step one, and then step. We're going to have loss of license automatically, and I believe, as you did, if it were me, I would select the tax-free version,
yep,
and those you're going to pay taxes on the imputed income, and those rates are not out yet that I know of. They'll come out, but that is, if it were me, that's what I would do. It's not a recommendation, but that's the way I think about it. And then you got to think about how much more do I want on top of that? Do I want the A, which is going to be cheaper as far as the premium's concerned? And at this rate, you said it's $312.50 per month at
that's
this
right.
pilot income rate. And then, hey, I need more than that. Well, uh, I'm going to select long-term disability B. I'm going to pay $504 a month So
That's
maybe
right.
that's a decision matrix. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean,
Mm,
I think the data suggests that if you're disabled, it's probably on average long-term disability is, 6 months or less, right? And
mhm.
then if you go longer than that, the chances are you're probably going to be on some very long-term
Yeah,
disability, which is why that LTDB is structured the way
yeah,
that it was to give
yeah.
you a higher payout starting in month 7.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard Damien Jeanette today talk to about, hey, this is probably a MetLife preference in that
Yeah.
they're taking on some risk on their end, so they're negotiating this lower payout for the first 6 months because, like you said, statistically, people come back to work and then if you stay out longer, they bump up the rate, so it gives them
Yep.
again, that's a negotiated thing, I'm sure. Andy, let's talk to these rates a little bit.
Yeah.
People are saying, hey, those are high, those are higher than they were before. Are we getting our money's worth? What's going on? What are your thoughts and opinions on that?
Yeah, so just kind of level set there. If you're on long-term disability A, you're gonna pay $1.25 for every $100 in
Mhm.
monthly payroll, and that's gonna be capped at
Yeah,
$312.50 per month. And
yeah.
then $1.59 per $100 of monthly benefit on long-term disability B, up to 667
Hmm.
per month. So yeah, you're gonna pay for it, right? So I think
Hmm.
that's it's sort of like, do you let that drive the show? It's not insignificant, right? If you're paying 6,000
Yeah,
bucks a year, that's not an
yeah.
insignificant number, but
Hmm.
you got to balance that, I think, with kind of the discussion we've already had in terms of
Yeah,
what do I need to sustain my family?
yeah.
Charlie, one other thing we haven't talked about here is you're still going to get that non-elective contribution,
Oh, yeah.
right? So you're going
Hmm.
to get the 17% that'll
Yeah,
bump up.
yeah,
Right now, that's going to come to you as
yeah,
cash, right? Because
yeah.
IRS basically said you can't put that in the 401k. Now,
Hmm.
that's if you're on a tax-free loss of license, right? So
Hmm.
you're going to get that as cash.
Yeah.
So that could theoretically bump you up, right? That's taxable
Hmm.
income. That could theoretically bump you up, just like vacation, just like
Hmm.
profit sharing. But they may find a place to put that you can't touch, right? And
Yeah,
so I wouldn't plan on that from my sustaining my
yeah.
day-to-day living.
Absolutely. And just for a little background, I think you told me the other day that United had ran into the same problem and they've put some of theirs in the market-based cash balance plan. I'm not sure if they've
That's
put it
ex
all in there, but that's a solution they came up with.
that's exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah.
United is putting theirs in their cash balance plan. Of course, they're
Mm.
still waiting on the IRS to bless theirs, so you never know.
Yeah.
Uh, you never know how that's going to go. They might get theirs in cash as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just back to this premium, it is a little pricey, and a lot of pilots are saying, "Hey, this is a lot more than it was before." But there's something to think about here in that this benefit is $2,500, and it stacks right on top of loss of license. And again, you and I just added these together, and you came up with, I think, if I'm pointing correctly to that number.
Yep,
And
perfect.
so they stack. Now, before they were offset, and most people over 240, 250 were really only going to get $1,000 a month in long-term disability because loss of license was taking you to X number, and then long-term disability was only going to take you to 13.5. And so that difference is what you were receiving. So now you're getting more benefit. That's why the premium has gone up. And clearly here you're getting a lot more benefit. So that's gone up as well. By the way, this fluctuates with your pay, not
Yeah,
your age. I think that's important because if you're 60, you're paying the same as a 28-year-old, except you're making more money. So you're going to pay more because of that. They're just, I think that's a good thing as well. Um, so do we do this or not? Again, it goes back to your personal planning, your budgeting, what you really want. If something were to happen to you, what do you want? What do you need for you and your family? I do believe that I think our industry, the aviation industry, is that one of the biggest risk is disability. And so I think the statistic was 1 in 4 aviation professionals, commercial airline pilots will be out on some kind of disability. So that's a pretty good chance that you'll experience a disability. And so I think our industry is very different in that way versus if you're some other business, a lawyer or whatever, then it's a lot less of a risk. So to me, it's probably worth at least doing one of these, long-term disability A, at least. Again, that's just what I would do, not a recommendation. But Andy, what do you think? Any thoughts on that just framework?
Yeah, I think that's the exact way to think about it is what do you need, right? Find out what you need and then find out what's going to get you there or what you need to do. How painful would it be to go with what you get, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the decision and then let the premiums kind of, maybe play a little bit of that
Mhm.
decision, but I wouldn't let them drive that decision, right? Because that's,
Yeah.
you got to pay for insurance.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the folks we work with, especially, we know or we get to learn and, hey, they're on the right track, they're doing all the right things. And then the next level of planning is like, hey, what's going to derail you? And it's disability. I mean, the
Hmm.
death, of course, element is there, but the disability is much more common and one that we need to make sure that we're prepared for because again, people, they're doing well, they get on the right track, and then we just want to take care of those risks that might knock them off their goals because this could be devastating as far as your vision for retirement if it happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, all right, cool. Andy, anything else for us?
Nope. Nope.
Okay, cool.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out our video and pass it on to, any other Southwest pilots that think it might, if you think it might be useful. Leadingedgeplanning.com is our website. You can reach me and Andy through email, Andrew at leadingedgeplanning.com, Charlie at leadingedgeplanning.com. Shoot us an email. We'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. And I know there's a lot of moving parts here, but I think there's some planning, some personal decisions that need to be made, and worst case scenario, go through the default and punt it down a little bit, maybe till the fall or something. But all right, Andy,
That's
thanks so
right.
much.
All right. Take care.